to the Kennedy Events Podcast, where we feature top marketing, communications, and future of work leaders and share their biggest takeaways and insights. We love these conversations and hope you will too. Let's get started.
Welcome to the Kennedy Events Podcast. I'm your host, Paige Buck, and recent guests have included Meg Fazy of Events Gig and Phase Forward, Carol Gale of Specialty Events, and Elaine Honig of Studio 440. And today I am delighted to be joined by Heather Mason. Heather co-founded Caspian agency in 2006 with the goal of bringing strategy and methodology together in the event industry. Imagine that. Her clients include large foundations like Rockefeller, Ford, Hewlett-Skoll, and others. In addition to her event production experience, she's also an MC and keynote speaker, as well as an instructor in the master's program at San Diego State University. She also writes a monthly column for Smart Meetings magazine called The Money Gal. Before we dive in with Heather, today's episode is brought to you by Kennedy Events. We create stress-free conferences and events, providing expert management and design for all your corporate event needs, from in-person to hybrid and virtual. You can learn more about us at kennedyevents.com. Heather, delighted to be here with you.
I am too. You're one of my favorite people, I have to say.
You too. And yeah, if I hadn't pressed record and insisted on this, we would have just shot that shit all day.
That's right.
Getting more and more inappropriate. And yeah.
Let's hope so. Let's hope so.
Ooh, behind the scenes bitch fest. Oh yeah, and we do
That's
swear
right.
here. Like
we do. Oh, good. I like that. I feel at home already.
Yeah. So tell me all about Caspian and as it just said in your bio, the strategy and methodology you developed that's sort of fueled your agency.
Yeah, well, I started Caspian Agency, I always like to say, based on two pillars. And the first pillar was around strategy and methodology. I had worked in the movie industry first. I wanted to be a producer of movies. And then I worked in marketing. And so I had to give board reports, metrics, numbers, all the ROI you could handle. And then I went into events when the dot-com burst, which is where I had been working in. And when I was there, I really thought, there should be a protocol of how we all engage events that is consistent across the board. Just like the burger companies, there's a way to make burgers. People can make them individually, creative, unique, but there is a way you make burgers. There's a way you make a car. You can make it interesting, but there are some principles. And I thought, where is that in the industry of events? So I took a project management course, didn't get my PMI or my PMP. I took the PMI course, loved it and thought this makes sense. And project managers were paid at that time a lot more than people in events. And so I thought, well, geez, I'd like to get more money and I'd like to add strategy. So I created the Caspian 10 Essentials. And really it's project management principles, where to start, which is with strategy, goals, outcomes, tactics, and measurements, going into audience mix analysis, the marketing angle you need, then content development, because I think every event human should be doing content development, not logistics only. I think that split is erroneous. And then going into roles and responsibilities, going into timelines, communication, budget, etc. So that was the first principle, was creating Caspian 10 Essentials. And then the second was, I wanted to work with people saving the world. And that's how we ended up with the client list we have.
Wow. And did you already have insight into those foundations and what drives them and what their day-to-day looks like?
No, not at all.
No, entirely new. You're like, I'm just going to go get them. I'm going to find them. I'm going to meet them.
Yes, that is exactly it. I was kind of like a toddler in traffic. I had no idea. I just quit my job and I had $1,400 in the bank. And I just thought, I can't make rich people richer, I was working at a finance company. And so a friend of mine, oddly, said, hey, I work at this place called the Skoll Foundation. And I said, Skull? That's a weird name. She said, no, Skoll, it's a gentleman's last name who I happen to think of as a hero today, which is funny. I didn't know his name. It was Jeff Skoll. And so I said, oh, and she said, you know what? We need some help on this event we're doing. And I said, well, I just quit my job. I started my company. The name is Caspian. And she said, let me see if I can get you an interview. And so that was my first client. And Skoll Foundation was pioneering arguably the widespread use of the term social entrepreneurship. Ashoka had coined it. There's a gentleman there who coined that, so it wasn't Jeff. He never takes credit for that. But I would say you could argue that the Skoll Foundation was really putting social entrepreneurship as a concept on the map. And so when I heard that term and the definition, I was like, that is what I wanted. I didn't know that's what I wanted. I just knew people saving the world, but I thought that was charity. And social entrepreneurship takes charity, and in my mind, I would say makes it a lot more activated. So I was excited to become a part of it. From then I was like, that's who I wanted to work with.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. So you're like, I just want to take this and duplicate it again and be more immersed in these sort of spaces and where people are coming for this sort of knowledge.
Yeah. And I always like to say at Caspian, we're social change adjacent. We help the movers that are moving and shaking the world and the mountains and shaking up the status quo. We help them do that. And I think because now after 18 years, we know a lot of the players in the ecosystems, we can actually become even more of a strategic asset to them because we can connect them. We know the different initiatives. We can say, hey, Ford, Rockefeller, and they know each other. It's not that they don't, but they may not be as immersed in each other's day-to-day as we might be. So we can start to draw really interesting strategic connections that we wouldn't have been able to if we hadn't focused specifically on this niche.
Is that sort of one of those unexpected value adds that you couldn't have anticipated at the outset?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, I always thought that strategy as a service was missing from some, not all, of course, some of the event companies I had worked with when I was in-house. They were focused on logistics, just tell us what we want, we'll do it. And I think that is where a lot of our industry started. And I think more and more people are moving away from that, which I see as a fantastic maturity of our industry. And I think the thing that we all still have to fight is that logistics and strategy can be separated. I fundamentally disavow that statement as erroneous, not even a problem, but it's an error in judgment and thinking, because that's like saying my surgeon cannot both diagnose what surgery I need and operate on it. It's as though I looked at my surgeon and said, no, you can only think of it. And then I'm going to go to Joe's chop shop to work on my knee. And it's just as bad if we have people saying, no, you really can be just a Joe chop shop. Well, that's not helpful for our industry either. If we don't want to be upstream, we're going to have a really hard time fighting for the type of money, the type of respect, and that phrase that people always say, a seat at the table, if we have no desire to fundamentally break down the idea that logistics and strategy are separate. We are surgeons. We can both think and operate, and that shouldn't be a shocker to anybody.
Yeah, I mean, we often describe ourselves as sort of like the conductor of the orchestra. And if I couldn't understand how the component parts come together, or forgive me, I saw Tar on the plane a couple of weeks ago, or what the composer had in their heart when they were, but yes, I mean, how can I figure out the best use of your dollars if I don't understand the goals behind and the reasons why we're having this event? Like,
right. And not even just that, but the deep level of the objectives of that organization, not even just that event, but actually knowing this organization over time is trying to move these audience groups, whether they're customers, stakeholders, salespeople, external, over time, they're trying to move them here. This event is just one little nodule in the entire campaign that a company is running. When you get people who are thinking at that sophisticated level, the execution of that node is going to be so much better placed. And frankly, event nodes are really, really pricey when compared with some of the other nodes of that campaign. And so that's why I'm still shocked that there's so much unsophisticated thinking that executives go through to think about event nodes. I'm like, actually, not only is our node one of your priciest nodes, we're going to be one of your most effective nodes.
And it doesn't stand alone in a vacuum, right? Like, we've certainly had clients where they're like, everything, often they're coming to us after they've had this experience, but then they really need us to shift them out of it. It's like, we put everything we had into doing this thing. We did this thing, it almost killed us. And then the
Yes.
very next day, we just went back to what we were doing before we did this thing.
Yep. And we
And
call
instead
them,
of,
right, we call them cliffhanger events. And people go, well, you know, those events where everybody comes and they say all this stuff is going to happen and then it doesn't. And I'm like, oh, that's on you. I do know those
yes,
events. And you should take your little finger and point it right back at your heart, because that was you. That was you not investing in the entire arc of the
yeah,
event. The event is a tent pole, and it's the pre and the post that are still the cost of that. And if you're going to burn out your team, because we get the same way, we get hired after 4 people quit after they
yes,
drag them over the finish line for this event. And then they wonder why they have no follow-up components. They have no follow-up capacity because everybody quit.
the
And
fortune they spent on video production is
oh,
sitting on a hard drive on somebody's desk. Yeah,
100%. And
yeah,
you've been through it too, where you see all this stuff and they go, well, we collected all this, but nobody's following up on the emails. Nobody sent any of the survey results. Nobody sliced and diced the production. And
yep,
yet, but we did it. And I'm like, did what? Because it sounds
yeah,
like you just fought a battle and nobody heard it.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I could not agree
amazing.
more. And I think that's why strategy in our industry is going to become more and more and more valuable. And I think especially because in COVID, we sold more strategy packages than we'd ever sold before. That is what not just kept us afloat, it was a rocket ship. And I'm going to predict that AI is going to be the next separator that makes strategy even more important, that the folks who want to just do logistics are going to separate themselves lower and lower into commodity land. And the folks who can do strategy, not just per event, but on a long-term horizon of marketing objectives, being able to do financial models, are going to go higher and higher and higher. And we're going to use AI to do that.
Yeah,
And
I think
so,
that's a really keen observation. And so you're an instructor, you're a trainer, you're a strategist. Tell me, I mean, it seems like a natural extension to me, but I could also just be filling in some blanks with my own biases. How did you move from that into keynote speaking? And then now the current thing that's fueling you, emceeing.
yeah, well, the bad part is I have been ever since this woman felt bad for me when I was 15, that I was so shy, I would, eat my fingernails down to the nubbin. And she grabbed me in Idaho Falls, Idaho, and said, you need to learn how to present yourself and speak well. And then my debate coach, who I was going to quit on the first day because I couldn't say my name, said, you're going to be the best speaker I've ever had. Between those two women, they turned me into the monster you see before you. And so after they got a hold of me, within 2 years, you can't take a microphone out of my hand. So I like to say I spend half my time putting people on stages who don't want to be there. And I like to be there. And so
Yeah.
to me, it's getting back to what I enjoy, which is speaking, getting people excited, having a room that's full of energy, welcoming people on stage with excitement and enjoyment. Because it always hurts my heart when I see people who don't want to be on stage, because I'm like, why? It's the best place in the world.
Well, it's an amazing superpower because people will always be in awe. I feel like there are few people who would say, I love to be up there. I love having the microphone. I love having the moment.
Yeah.
And then what's the Venn diagram of people who say that and actually can leave their ego and be there for the experience and for the audience.
Right. And I think you're right. That's the trick of when I get to keynote speak, of course, then it's my show. When you're an MC, it is definitively the show of the client, the host, the speakers, the panelists. And I think that is a real important differentiation, because it should not be the MC show. It should be the thread that guides it. And I think where I get excited there, like I just did one in Atlanta, was being able to thread the narrative. And that comes from my love of film and storytelling, and trying to see where we're taking this audience on this emotional ride through the day, which
Mm,
is like a live film, and how, what's coming next and how these things go together. And that to me is the job of it, rather than what you're saying, which I agree with, is the spotlight show. It's to me, this is a narrative.
Now back to me. No,
Yeah, back to me. Hi, hey. Yeah.
do you calibrate, like, in your experience doing this, do you calibrate a persona to the organization and the vibe of the event?
That's funny you asked that. That is one of my questions I have when I interview a client to be an MC. I say, look, because we have clients at Caspian who are very, I would say, and I say this without any judgment at all, it's just factually placement in our client roster, who are very austere. I would say they are very serious, and there is a lot of gravitas, and there is not a lot of room for joking. And that would be seen as very distasteful. And then we have clients who want a little bit of rambunctiousness. And then we have clients that there's a fine line. And then we have clients, which I think was important for this particular one, who are very multicultural. And what I have found in multicultural situations is it is very difficult to use humor, because the humor I would use comes from an American grown perspective, which is likely not going to land well when you're in a room of 60 different countries being represented. So I do ask right out of the gate what type of vibe they'd like to cultivate. Friendly, austere, serious, gravitas, fun, lighthearted, charisma, energy. Hey, get out of your seats. What is that? Because if I'm a charisma energy in an austere land, that would land me, I think, in the backstage real quickly, real fast.
Like, somebody get the hook. What's she doing up there? Oh. That nasty woman. That
nasty woman. That nasty woman. Well, and it also goes to what you wear too, right?
Absolutely. I mean, every choice.
There's some places where I could wear probably one of my more fun dresses, and then there's some places where I better be in a suit. And the hard part is my feet are so bad from playing years of soccer. It's hard to wear high heels anymore. So I'm getting a little stuck on the footwear lately.
That's tricky. It's also tricky post-COVID. It was like, I have to put on anything restrictive in any way, shape, or form. I put on heels that I used to love to wear, and I'm like, halfway through, I'm like, what's happening?
What? Anything with a button, for heaven's sakes. I'm like, why is this button here?
Yep.
Where? No.
No, everything should be soft. We're just like in like Star Trek clothing. Like,
I just want a uniform. Yeah, that I just have to zip up. That'd be great.
There you go. So tell me about the column that you're writing, The Money Gal, and what inspired you there?
Yeah, so it actually goes back to a little bit about what I'm teaching at San Diego State, which I teach in the master's program, and the course I teach is financials and economics. What I learned very quickly is my course is not something people look forward to. I thought, well, that's too
this
bad.
one.
I know. And I thought, well, that's too bad. I also found it funny because if anyone knows my history, I did not do well in advanced math courses. That is not my strength. What my strength is money. Now, that is my strength. But money is very different than high math. It's not calculus. I mean, I'm not going to teach people how to do declining amortizations. I don't even know how to do that. But what I did want to teach is, how do you think fundamentally about building something of value over time? Because I see events as a pop-up business. They have to have a business plan, which is the 10 essentials, and then they have to have a financial plan attached to that, not a budget, a financial plan. Just like you go to a financial planner and they don't go, well, here's your budget for the month of how much you get in groceries. No, a financial planner will help you do wealth planning and management over the course of your life, or over the course of your next 20 years. Thinking about money that way when it comes to events is very useful and helpful if you want to be at the executive level, if you want that seat at the table. So I thought, why is this so scary? And I also thought, well, hey, we should be talking about this every day in our industry. And we should be sharing things like pricing models and the way we price, and talking about it as much as possible. In any male-dominated industry, they love to talk about money. So what is wrong with the scarcity model of a very female-dominated industry not talking about money every 4 seconds we get? So I thought, well, I like to talk about money. I really like to talk about money a lot. It's fun. And I also don't have any fear that everybody's going to take all $63 billion in the US away from me. A, I don't have it. But B, even if somebody took 62 billion, I'd still be okay. So I thought I'm going to write a column and just start spreading the news, putting it out there, getting the conversation started so that we really start to talk about money.
I
And
think
that's
it's
what I
really
want to
savvy to look at the thing that people are burying their head in the sand about.
do.
I know for myself personally, it's like that thing I'm procrastinating, that thing I'm
Yes.
avoiding. It's
Yes.
probably the thing that really needs my attention and that would be a game changer.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I also think too, it's not scary when it gets down to it's just addition and subtraction. That is it. And then it's about creativity. So how do you, once you know the nodes you can play with, you can play with ticket prices, you can play with sponsorship, you can play with purchasing lists, you can play with all sorts of different levers, and then let's put prices on them. And if it's not being used in real life, well, now you can have fun with money. And when we learn how to have fun with money and be creative with money, the fear factor goes away, I find.
Yeah.
You can then start to go, what if I did this? What if I did that? Well, what if you start a shell company over here and this company pays this company? Is that legal? Yeah, that's why guys are doing it all the time. What? I mean, we can do things really straightforward and make it really hard and then wonder why they go golf all the time. Well, they go golf because they're talking about money and they're talking about really interesting models. And if we want to go golf all the time, we need to do that too, because I'm never going to conflate hard martyrdom with value. I don't
Yeah.
like hard martyrdom. I don't like it at all.
Doesn't feel good.
It doesn't feel good, and it doesn't pay very well either.
So you are a resource and information source yourself for trends and best practices. You've just been telling us all about them. Where do you go to seek out information on trends and best practices and the
So
messaging?
yeah, so that's a really good question. Because I'm a sci-fi geek. That's why I was really glad that you mentioned Star Trek. I knew we loved each other for a reason. So I think things like, I definitely read all my newsletters every day, meetings.net, Today Meeting, Smart Meetings, BizBash, all of those. So at least I keep current on things like laws and changing economic situations, which I think are important. But where I really like to go are books about future trends and predictions in any industry. So there was a woman, which still is, Faith Popcorn.
Oh gosh, I haven't heard that name in a while. Yes, I remember Faith Popcorn. Yeah.
I loved reading Faith Popcorn. So I still read her. I follow her on Twitter and I still read her. And then I also read Malcolm Gladwell a lot, only because I think the way he thinks, I want to learn how he thinks because he's able to predict things because of the way he thinks. And so I want to be like, okay, how can I get my brain in that mode? And then Adam Grant, I love just from an HR perspective and thinking about trends around that. And then I just read a lot of the news, but I always need more futurist books. I think futurist books are much more interesting. And if I were going to program some of these, event conferences for event people, I'm like, where are the futurists? Where are the innovators? I don't need to have somebody be like, you're good enough. Okay, ban that garbage, like whatever. Like, I want to know, I'm sorry, I'm just so bored of it. Let's do a separate conference for that. But if we're going to have a business conference, like, let's start looking at trends and predictions so that we're getting ahead of the curve, because I am so biased about our industry in such a horrible way that I think we are in the best industry in the world. I think we are leading the charge. We're getting humans together, and nothing, no AI, no technology is ever going to replace the fact that human beings, water bags, to use Star Trek's term, love to get together.
Yes.
Water
Yeah,
bags.
I have no fear about that going away. Yeah.
Me neither.
You're
That's
right.
why I love our industry. That's why I'm so bullish on our industry, because I'm like, oh, I'm in the best one. People go, aren't you worried? I'm like, nope.
No, come at me.
Come at me, man. I put water bags together in a room. You take that away.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and when you realize how just like getting up on stage and holding that microphone, people are in awe that you would ever proactively choose that.
Use that, yes.
Doing this is also something people find very challenging. So great. Continue to find it impossible. Those of us who find it easy and really love it will thrive.
It's so true. I bet you hear as much as I do what people say, I could never do what you do. I go, oh, good. Yay. That says I have a specialty. And that's great.
Yeah. That is so true. All right. Well, I'll just come out with my final question here. Somebody that this is perfect to what we've been talking about, someone you admire, someone you look to whether in our industry or in the broader social entrepreneurship sphere.
Oh, geez. I'm glad you threw in social entrepreneurship. So my normal go-to 100% of the time is Oprah. I love Oprah more than anything in the world. Probably enough that she should probably be worried. I love her so much.
You're not the only person she probably has to worry about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Everything she does, I think is so right on and inspires me and invigorates me, and just the way she encourages, especially women, to think about their lives. I think she broadened the aperture for all of us. And I am immensely grateful for that. And I just respect her beyond anybody else. I think when you say social entrepreneur, it's really fun to think about because there are so many social entrepreneurs that are doing incredible things. There's one who I just barely met, and I'm trying to think of her last name. First name's Ambiola. And she's an African entrepreneur who is creating a new business model around end-to-end healthcare and using women as a way of bridging all those healthcare roles. And yet it's for a profit, which I always like it when women are doing for profit. It's not like we all have to be, again, this hard martyrdom that women think is neat and is going to get us some sort of crown at the end of the road needs to go away. Like, I'm so done with that whole business. She has a business model, and I just barely met her in April, and very inspired, and I want to learn more about her. She was speaking on a panel, and I didn't have a chance to dive in at that moment, but wow, an impressive, incredible force of a human being.
Amazing. And probably like you, I'm often in a room for 5 minutes, hearing something beautiful, wishing I could stay and listen to it, and then on to the next thing.
Yes.
Whatever it is.
Yes, that's exactly it. I had 5 minutes where I heard her and I'm like, wow, I want to learn so much more about this woman, what she's doing, how she's thinking, and just, again, her charisma and power in communicating it was awesome. Because I always find, you hear good ideas, but unless you've also got that mouthpiece that is getting everybody on board, it's harder to make those awesome ideas come to the fore. And I feel like she had both. Amazing. Which was really neat. So yeah.
That strikes me as something that you can do as an MC too. You can help that land for somebody when they need to maybe just fill in a little bit here or there.
Right. Yeah, that is true. That is true. Because you're right. You can help people kind of get out of their shells a little more, and also get that point to be heard if you think there's a really good nugget that maybe wasn't quite broadcast to the audience enough. Because you don't always get the ambiolas who are larger than life and incredibly powerful.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
We can't all be ambiolas. So.
No, but you're positioning yourself to be able to lift up and create the thread for everybody. Yes. That's really beautiful.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, Heather, it's been a joy talking to you. And where can people learn more about you? What's the best way to find you in Caspian?
Oh, love it. So our website is caspianagency.com. And then my personal speaking website is heathermason.com.
You got it. Nice job.
I did get heathermason.com. There was a gal who was an amazing equestrian named Heather Mason, but she let her website lapse because I think she stopped. So I got it. Yay. And then I'm with Conference MCs. So if you contact Conference MCs, they are my booking agency, and they're amazing.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. This was a pleasure.
It was.
Thanks for listening to the Kennedy Events Podcast. Come back next time and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.